CEO Scotford showed up with only two slides, and one of them was just a picture of a guy getting into a yellow cab on a busy New York street. Why would somebody do that? They don't want this takeover to happen. This story is a part of entrepreneurship lesson. Welcome. It was a hard-earned success when on May 20th of the year 2007, the CEO of Alltel Corporate, Scott Ford, announced that the company was going to be sold to two private equity firms, TPG Capital of Fort Worth, Texas, and Goldman Sachs Capital Partner of New York. The deal was a multi-billion-dollar deal as Alltel Corporate has become one of the largest wireless telecom provider in the USA. Alltel Corporate was founded in 1943 in Arkansas, and after a striving and steady climb, they have finally the largest market share. As the two private equity firms, TPG Capital of Fort Worth, Texas, and Goldman Sachs Capital Partner of New York, asked Scott to meet with them and deliver a detailed presentation on how to run the business. A takeover would mean they would handle the business and get to know how the organization works. Now, you can imagine the dozens of charts, graphs, and bullet points they might have been expecting, and a meeting with a large amount of knowledge exchange and discussion with a detailed Q&A round. But instead, CEO Scotford showed up with only two slides, and one of them was just a picture of a guy getting into a yellow cab on a busy New York street. Why would somebody do that? They don't want this takeover to happen. Before judging the CEO, let's quickly kill the like button. And let's take a look at all the stakeholders in the room. Apart from the CEO, we have people from two private equity firms who were ready to acquire Alltel Corporate at a premium. And now you have to understand that private equity firms aren't usually interested in buying companies and managing them for decades. Typically, they buy companies they think will be more valuable if combined with another company or managed differently, or that simply need an infusion of cash to grow to the next level. By providing the funds, they can achieve their desired value at the end. Their objective, of course, is to quickly grow the value of the business and then sell it. Let's just say Scott being one of the brightest CEO who knew all that, of course. Let's press subscribe for talented Scott. So now, the vision was clear, the goal were in line, it was time for just a metaphor to capture the attention, and which describes the situation and conditions. Why not make it relevant to everyone? A guy getting into a yellow cab on a busy New York City street, a sight everyone watches every day, and this slide fits perfectly with the explanation Scott had to offer. Quickly he explained, there needs to be convergence of three events for them to sell the company for a slightly higher price than they just paid for it. Now, these three events are noteworthy. First, he told them the buyer would need to be one of a big carrier like AT&T or Verizon or Sprint. Nobody else is going to value the company high enough to make any serious returns, and certainly not another private equity firm. This needs to be sold to someone in the market. Second, he said interest rates would have to be low enough for the multi-billion-dollar acquisition like this to make financial sense to a buyer. That means they'd have to be strong bond market. And third, he explained, the temperature of Washington DC would have to be just right to allow acquisition of this size by an even larger competitor. The Justice Department monitors all mergers and acquisitions to make sure that they don't result in a monopoly. If it thinks a deal will hurt consumers, it can block the purchase or even unravel it after it's done. How is that relevant to the image on the slide? The scenario is similar to waiting for that moment, is a bit like trying to hail a cab in New York. you might have to wait a while. So when a yellow cab does pull over to pick you up, you'd better get in. You might not get another chance for a long time. On May 20th, 2007, Altair announced an agreement to be sold to two private equity firms, TPG Capital and GS Capital Partners. Under the deal, the two firms paid $71.50 a share in cash or $27.5 billion, a 10% premium over Altair's May 18, 2007 closing price. But this story doesn't end here. A year later, Scott was relaxing at his home and all of a sudden his phone rings. He picks up the phone and on the other end is the senior executive that he'd given the presentation a year earlier. He said, "Scott, we received an offer from Verizon to buy the company for $28.1 billion. What do you think about this deal? Is it worth a sale? Should we take it?" Scott was silent. After a few awkward seconds of silence, the executive finally spoke up, again with the answer to his own question. "This is the yellow cab, isn't it, Scott?" For the next few minutes, the senior executive repeated everything Scott had told him a year earlier and recognized that all three of Scott's criteria were true at the same time. In the end, he thanked Scott for his time and counsel. Scott, on the other hand, hung up the phone, having said only a few words, none of which had anything to do with the sale of Altair. Scott opens up to his newspaper a few days later. On the front page, big flashy news reads, "Verizon purchases Altair for $28.1 billion. Now, even after 12 months, the yellow cab metaphor convinced the executive to take the offer now instead of waiting for a better one later, and without even having to be reminded. That's the power of metaphor at its finest. Metaphors are powerful because you are just refreshing the memory which already exists in your audience's mind. Few words, a sentence, a picture, the entire story is rejuvenated. So next time, spend some time coming up with metaphors that support your recommendations. If the story provides a valuable lesson, the next story is even better. Don't forget to subscribe for our entrepreneurial story like Scott Ford and check out our next one.